Hey everyone, today I am going to talk to you about the American dream and the way that um, Capote uses the Clutter family to unpack a couple of falsities around the American dream. I have made a couple of notes, and when you're not a teenager anymore, you will understand why. But basically, I just wanted to get you thinking about the Clutter family and how they are actually imperfect. I've been reading a lot of essays that have been written during revision time talking about the Clutters as the perfect family and having achieved the American dream, with no further explanation about how Capote constructs those characters to debunk some of the myths around the attainability of the American dream and that it exists in a simplistic capacity. So we need to keep in mind that the American dream is the ability to achieve prosperity through hard work. That if you work hard, you will live an affluent and happy life. Um, I suppose my key point in talking about this is that essays that refer to the Clutter family as being perfect are fundamentally flawed and don't show in depth insight into Capote's construction of the text. We need to remember that Capote didn't know the Clutter family. Um, he based his Clutter family characters around what people had told him about them and therefore used characterization to manufacture them into the characters that he wanted to portray for his message that the American dream is fundamentally unachievable. So, if you're ever talking about the Clutter family in an essay, I would encourage you to talk about the fact that they are seemingly perfect, that there is a veil of perfection around the Clutter family, and underneath that veil of perfection are really, really flawed characters. The characters and their flaws are hidden by their big house that Mr. Clutter designed himself, the beautiful long, driveway that's lined with, elm trees that are emblematic of a man and his success, of the fact that they are selfless and serve the community. All of these are the Clutters on the surface, this surface image of what it is to be perfect and to have achieved the American dream. So, if we briefly look at all of those characters in a little bit more detail, starting with Herb, he's arrogant and his piety gets in the way of seeing, people for who they really are. If somebody that he employs does something that is against his beliefs, then he will disregard them. There's a quote along the lines of, would fire somebody even if they didn't have anything to eat that night, which is contradictory to the mores of religion, the mores that say we help people who are vulnerable and less fortunate than us. Bonnie has evident mental health issues, bouts of depression, postnatal depression. Kenyon, their youngest son, is 15 years old. This woman has been suffering from postnatal depression for 15 years and it hasn't been attended to. Now, another key idea that obviously links to is, mental health and the way that society understood and treated that. But in terms of Bonnie's mental health, you know, Herb is understanding, but I wouldn't say particularly nurturing of Bonnie in that capacity. The symbolism of them not sharing a bed or a bedroom even demonstrates the what's the right word, the raft between them, the fact that, Herb doesn't really know how to deal with Bonnie, so it's easier just to have her exist in another room of the house. Um, so yeah, that not sharing of the bedroom is symbolic of their flawed and strained marriage. Not to say that there isn't love there. I think there is love there, but it's probably not beyond the realms of possibility to suggest that Herb was doing his due diligence as a religious man who had married a woman, until death do us part. in terms of Nancy, the town darling, I think the moment where um, Jolene Katz phones and asks Nancy to help her daughter learn how to bake a cherry pie. Nancy's really reluctant to do it, but does it anyway. So here we see Nancy, who is a people pleaser, which isn't necessarily a good thing, especially for a young woman. We see somebody who is conditioned to, you know, be everything that a woman should be. She should smile and be polite and be good at cooking and be able to ride a horse and perform in the school play and be the star. So she is absolutely adhering to everything society says that young women should do. And finally, Kenyon is a really interesting character. He's slightly cockeyed, he's a reticent young man, he does a lot of, you know, woodwork in his father's basement. We kind of see, this boy who, again, on the surface, is doing everything a young boy should, but he's the opposite of Herb. He isn't really interested in being social. He doesn't like being around people at all. And also, I love the fact that Nancy and Kenyon will steal a cigarette every now and then, or sneak a smoke, which is directly defying their parents. In particular, um, Herb, who lives a very, very meager lifestyle, would just have an apple for breakfast, doesn't like to fill up on a warm stomach at the start of the day because his religion is all about deprivation. To defy your parents, not only 60 years ago, but also in a strict religious family, was incredibly deviant. And this shows, moments of imperfection for both, Nancy and Kenyon when they're outside talking about it at one stage. I think Nancy picks a wilted dahlia and puts it in her hair. So dahlias or wilted dahlias are symbolic of death. So that's an element of foreshadowing that you could use in that capacity as well. So now that we have spoken about the fundamental flaws of these people, we could say that Capote uses the clutters to exemplify the falsities around the American dream, that the American dream is an illusion and it doesn't in practice and in reality exist. Perfect people do not exist, and particularly in presenting the Clutters as imperfect, Perry, by comparison, when we're introduced to him, seems less harsh. If the Clutters aren't perfect, then we are less judgmental of Perry, who certainly is not perfect. Uses the Clutters to warn about the impacts of leading an insular life where you don't go and socialize with anybody else ever. How are you then going to negotiate, differences with people who aren't like you? And just tying back to that veil of perfection around the Clutters. When you strip back that veil, Capote presents them as fundamentally flawed to exacerbate or exemplify or emphasize his message about the American dream.